Querida audiencia, estamos aquí para dar a conocer una noticia de alcance. Por lo tanto, tenemos que avanzar el programa previsto sobre el mediodía, pero os vamos a dar a conocer lo que realmente acaba de ocurrir. Por lo tanto, vamos a presentar el vídeo y luego haremos comentarios.
That's how U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent emerged from a closed-door session, his tie askew, papers crumpled in his hands, his face red with fury. But he wasn't walking. He carried the weight of a new era of trade as if he were carrying it. He only managed to utter 5 words in front of the cameras before disappearing. We sent the letters, 100. And with those 5 words, the world knew something had changed. Bessent confirmed that 100 countries had received what he called tariff letters, but experts and critics agreed on another term: ultimatums. There was no negotiation or offer, just a threat wrapped in official paper: renegotiate trade on U.S. terms or face tariffs not seen since the 1930s. The message was clear: cooperate or pay. However, there's one detail that turns this maneuver into a paradox. Most countries never even agreed to sit at the table. Vietnam, South Korea, and Mexico, whose economies depend heavily on exports to the United States, did feel pressure. But others, from South Africa to Turkey, from Indonesia to Egypt, maintained an icy silence. Silence that does not imply fear, it is actually indifference. According to data from Bloomberg Global Trade Trackers, at least 63 of these countries already trade more with China or India than with the United States, and the trend is not stopping. Why accept bilateral agreements with asymmetric conditions when there are blocs such as BRICS, ASEAN, or the Eurasian Economic Union that offer trade routes with lower tariffs, more flexible rules, and no political demands? Trump's decision to repeatedly postpone the tariffs, first to July 7th, then to August 1st, has only sown more uncertainty. It's not about deadlines, it's about signals. But financial markets don't tolerate ambiguity. The S&P 500 index fell 2.1% the same day his comments hit Bloomberg Terminal. It wasn't the content that was alarming, but the chaos surrounding them. As if the classic tariff war weren't enough, Trump opened a second front under an even more ambiguous logic. A 10% tariff is now automatically imposed on any nation that the White House deems to be aligned with anti-American brick-and-mortar policies. And what exactly does anti-American mean? The directive doesn't make it clear. It could imply participation in de-dollarization initiatives in multipolar infrastructure or in swap agreements based on non-fiat currencies. Under this logic, even NATO member Germany could be sanctioned for using the digital yuan in transactions with China. Brazil, for its part, could face double punishment for its role in the new BRICS reserve system. This is how a moving red line is constructed. Anyone who trades outside the dollar is suspect, but that logic clashes with reality. The United States helped build the very trade order that it now seeks to punish: the WTO, the IMF, SWIFT, free trade agreements. It is a geo-economic Frankenstein, a creature created in Washington that is now rebelling against its creator. In 2000, the G7 represented 70% of global GDP. Today it barely reaches 43%. BRICS, on the other hand, went from 18% to 34%, and with the incorporations in process such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Indonesia, they could reach 46% of global productive capacity and dominate more than half of critical minerals. The IMF predicts that China alone will reach 19% of global GDP by 2029. Against this tide, what power does a tariff letter have? The United States argues that its huge domestic market offers irresistible pulling power, but that argument misses a point. Leverage works both ways. According to Census Bureau data, the United States imports more than $3.1 trillion worth of goods annually. In other words, it depends on the world as much as the world depends on it. And even if tariffs are imposed, foreign exporters will not be the only ones hurt. American producers will also suffer from higher input prices, fragmented logistics, and trade retaliation. The retaliation is not hypothetical, it is already underway. Intra-British trade topped $650 billion in 2024, growing 5.2% despite the global slowdown. More than 37 countries have adopted yuan or regional instrument settlement systems since 2023. Brazil and Argentina already channel more than 40% of their trade with China outside the dollar. That implies less need to recycle them into US treasuries, and the numbers bear that out. Foreign holdings of these bonds have fallen by $289 billion in the past 12 months. China alone has cut its position by $12 billion, the biggest drop since 2016. As Washington tries to maintain its hegemony with threats, Beijing is accumulating gold. In June, the People's Bank of China added 70,000 troy ounces to its reserves, bringing the annual total to 34.2 metric tons. Depoliticized and free of sanctions, gold is becoming the new silent weapon. Europe, a traditional ally of Washington, is also starting to diversify. A pension fund of a German church invested $50 million in Chinese stocks in Hong Kong. This gives China access to undervalued technology and industrial companies, but there's also a symbolic weight, a European player aligned with NATO, betting on the US rival. The Hang Seng Index is up 21.3% so far this year. The S&P 500 is up just 6.7%. It's not a Wall Street meltdown, but it is a sign of diversification in the face of structural instability in US fiscal policy. In parallel, China is preparing to partially unwind its capital controls. According to Bloomberg, it could expand the Bond Connect South, allowing up to 1 trillion yuan in Chinese outward investments. The aim is to create a mature financial system in Hong Kong, independent of Wall Street, a parallel platform that can grow without the US and eventually against it. In the meantime, Trump's fiscal strategy is fueling a dangerous spiral. His latest economic package added $3.4 trillion to the deficit, raising inflation projections by 1.7 points for 2026. And most alarmingly, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, the wealthiest 20% will see their incomes grow by 2.3%. While the poorest 20% will see theirs fall by the same proportion. With tariffs raising prices and purchasing power plummeting, domestic consumption is cooling, small businesses are suffering, and growth is stagnating. According to the Peterson Institute, if the tariffs proposed in August are implemented, structural inflation could reach between 15 and 20%. The final paradox is devastating. The United States helped create the trade routes, digital payment systems, infrastructure templates, and even the agreements that the BRICS are now using to weave their global alternative. This is not a revolutionary coup, it is a remix. If Washington continues to threaten instead of competing, isolation will come not from external punishment, but from the very gravity of its policy. Will the BRICS yield to the pressure? Will Trump recalibrate his approach, or are we, as the gold accumulated in Beijing whispers, facing the definitive fracture of the old world order? The silence of the 100 countries is not fear, it is a diagnosis. The world has already changed. Will Washington?
Bueno, Amparo, ¿qué opinas de esta sorpresa de alcance?
Bueno, pues muy importante en los momentos en que estamos y esperamos la evolución de esta gran noticia. Sigamos pues en la misma marcha y bueno, muchos éxitos. Adelante.
Muchas gracias, Amparo. Pues sí, esto es la consecuencia de los bandazos que da el imperio. Y naturalmente hasta ahora contaban con los países que entran al BRICS, pero resulta que en este vídeo nos explican que 100 estados abandonan el imperio, abandonan Washington, abandonan USA. ¿Y eso por qué? Porque han escrito las 100 cartas y naturalmente esos países que estaban en peligro, no sabían qué hacer, al final con el apoyo rotundo que han dado los BRICS a este mundo tan embarullado que se encuentra actualmente, pues aparentemente sí se han puesto todos detrás de Irán para la guerra y nadie toca a Irán porque los BRICS tienen esa soberanía que solamente actúan de acuerdo unos con los otros, pero desde su punto de vista y nadie está obligado a hacer algo que no pueden hacer. En contraposición con la organización de la OTAN, del imperio, que lo que hacen es exigir y pagar y como hace la Unión Europea también. Así que estamos en la línea que nos habíamos propuesto en el pasado, cuando empezamos estos programas de los BRICS en marcha, y naturalmente pues nos vamos de nuevo y continuaremos con nuestros programas habituales sobre la 1 de la tarde, la 1:15, en caso de que no haya ninguna otra información de alcance que vendremos aquí para ponerlo en las redes. Por tanto, les deseamos que pasen un feliz día, que continúen disfrutando del verano y Amparo y yo seguimos también con nuestras tareas. Que lo pasen bien.
Vale, vale, bye.